John Charles Stiles, welcome to the podcast, Common Sense with Joey Barton. Just talking and doing a bit of research in the build-up to it, and I said, if you were a racehorse, father, Nobby Stiles, obviously World Cup winner, Manchester United legend, and Uncle Johnny Giles, Leeds United, royalty. And as I say, if you were a racehorse, mate, you'd have been sold for millions and millions of pounds to some big mad sheikh. Based on your pedigree.
Yeah, it's a good job they didn't buy me for millions, isn't it?
Hey, mate, listen, you still turned out all right. So John, listen, obviously we're here to talk about all manner of different things, but the one thing I know you for is obviously, the CTE in football and the dangers that are now being exposed about what it is to be a professional footballer and certainly head the ball a lot in certain positions. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah. My dad started losing his memory late 50s, early 60s, Joey, and it was a gradual progression because he started good cardio, so he was he was hanging around for a while. But anyway, basically, when he was in his home, somebody rang me up and said he'd been diagnosed with vascular dementia and Alzheimer's. And somebody rang me up and said, it probably isn't that, it's probably CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. I didn't know what it was. So I started doing my research, spoke to Professor Willie Stewart in Scotland. It made perfect sense to me that every time you have a head impact, a tau protein breaks off. If you don't have another head impact, it's okay. But when you do, over the years of heading the ball, it then forms into a tangle, settles on the brain and destroys it. So when Dad passed away, we donated his brain, and no vascular, no Alzheimer's. Brain was riddled with CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. So since then, I believe it's almost epidemic proportions in football, and it's been ignored and it's been covered up, a little bit like the post office scandal. And I think it's terrible that players aren't even informed about this. And I think it's not rocket science. If you head the ball thousands of times, you're going to get CTE. And it's something I'm very passionate about. And there's no help out there for the ex-players, virtually nothing.
I mean, we've spoken in the build-up to this, and I did say to you, I'm not aware of, this big epidemic that's clearly within the game. If this is linked with heading the ball, I just think of how many thousands of times I've headed the ball as a young person, and then obviously as a professional footballer. And when you sent me some of the information over and I looked at it instantly, I was like, I've got that symptom. I've got that symptom now. As I said to you, if you came to me and I'm on the council estate at 6 years of age and you said, look, you're going to have this career, this is what you're going to do, you're going to play for England, but when you're 60, 65, you're going to have dementia, I'll level with you, John. I'd have snapped your hands off at 6 for my career, and again, like being a boxer and a rugby player, and there's risks associated with it. When you have to look at Sir Anthony McCoy and the amount of injuries he's got as a horseman. So we do know when we get into sport that there's going to be the possibility of injury and obviously long-term ramifications of that. Would you agree?
I'd agree. What you're saying is exactly true, Joey. You get kids and the parents, they want them to do it. If you said to a kid, look, go and head a wall 20 times and you become a top footballer, or they do anything. Yeah. And that's fine. People can make their own decisions, but they need to know about it. Now, if they know about it, I didn't know when I was heading a football that this disease existed. I didn't even know there was a risk of dementia. I mean, we all know your knees go, your hips go, but your brain's a different thing. The brain runs the whole of your body, and people need to know about CTE. Virtually nobody knows.
Yeah, well, my first awareness of it was obviously when the movie came out about the NFL. I think the movie was called Concussion, and it was based on the impact between the guys who were playing a high-level American football. I didn't think straight away to football, but, my mind more went to, rugby, league, union, boxing. And then, obviously, you think, well, I'm actually heading the ball in football. And very, very quickly, I thought, my God, actually, if CTE is multiple small impacts on the brain, then footballers, as I say, would be probably right up there with boxers in terms of direct impact on the brain due to heading the ball. How does a young person get diagnosed, or an older person get diagnosed with CTE? Because from what I gather about it, you can only diagnose it after the brain's been donated to scientific research.
And this is why they've got away with the cover-up, because they can't only do it at autopsy, but the numbers are unbelievable. I mean, my dad's team from the World Cup, at 75, the rate should have been 1 in 44. It was 1 in 2. That's how the odds of that are millions to 1.
Is this in footballers or sportsmen?
This is in footballers. I'm dealing specifically with footballers, but football's the only sport, really, where you actually go and head a projectile that's been fired towards you at quite a high pace. And there'll be a direct correlation between the amount of times you've headed the ball, so if you've had a longer career, there'll be a direct correlation between that and whether you get CTE or not.
What about position specific? Obviously, wingers tend to head the ball a little bit less than everybody else. Obviously, centre halves and defenders head the ball a bit more. Is there any difference in position?
Absolutely, massively. Willie Stewart's second study in 2021 established that if you weren't a centre half or a defender where you've done loads of heading in training, you were 3 times more likely to get dementia than the national population. Defenders, it's 5 times. So yes, the study really indicates that the more you head the ball in training because of your position, because it's essential, you've got an even greater chance of getting CTE.
So how do we get people help then? If this is a disease that clearly the symptoms of it seem to be dementia-like in terms of memory loss and obviously muscle atrophy, I would imagine, in some form or fashion. Fit men, ex-footballers should be fit at older men, because if they're being fit at younger men, there's a high chance you're going to be a fit at older man, and obviously what we're seeing is not the case. And how we crossed paths was, I was obviously in the midst of doing this podcast, I was trying to get back in touch with obviously my old manager Kevin Keegan and Terry McDermott, and then obviously Terry's somebody who's suffering with I don't know what to say, but I think it's dementia from what I gather. But again, could it be this CTE?
In my opinion, it's a stone cold certainty. I was talking with John Aldridge a couple of weeks ago. John's actually said publicly he feels as though there's some damage. He feels as though that he said that he stated that in, I think it was a paper in Ireland, and he's very distressed about the amount of Liverpool players, ex-Liverpool players, who have got CTE. It's ridiculous how many there are.
Well, we've just seen Stan Bowles pass away this weekend. I heard rumours he had dementia when I was at QPR, obviously QPR legend, and he came to the club, but he wasn't, in the best of health. And then obviously, I think Chris Nichols, the manager, passes away this weekend again. Is this unfolding in front of our eyes and we're not noticing it because there's no awareness around it?
It is, Joey. It is. Football's a big business. They don't want this to explode, but it needs to explode. Chris Nichols' family are convinced that heading the ball has caused it. They're convinced he's got CTE. Distressingly for me, I was reading the reports about the great Stan Bowles. They were talking about his battle with Alzheimer's. Well, my dad didn't have Alzheimer's. And I'm convinced footballers, I don't know whether the family knows about CTE, that it could possibly be that or not. But they were saying, it's Alzheimer's, God bless him, at such a difficult time. But yeah, this is unfolding right in front of us.
What I'm thinking of here is obviously the game was played with a different ball back in the day. That's the big argument. The ball was heavier, it absorbed more water. But also, I'm thinking about your dad, quite a small central midfield player, wouldn't be renowned for his heading, a World Cup winner. So obviously he's in the centre of the pitch. I know the game was a bit different back then, pitches were a bit different, but he's playing for Manchester United in England, so he's playing at the apex of the game. So if your dad's suffering from that and his generation, who were top players playing at the top of the game, obviously the teams that play lower down the pyramid are playing a more direct version with more head and more physical contact. So this must be an epidemic running right throughout everybody who's ever played the game. in this country?
I believe it is, Joey. I really do. Just to address your thing about the balls, the old balls, the balls at the start of a match weigh the same as they always did, between 14 and 16 ounces, like a boxing glove. But the old balls got wet, so they were heavier. So obviously it's going to hurt more. But the new balls don't get wet, but they travel faster. In the last World Cup, Adidas advertised the new World Cup ball as the fastest ball has ever been. Well, speed means there's a greater impact. And they've done a study in Scotland at Stirling University where they've established that the new balls, when you head it from a corner or a kick out, have got 80% the power of a boxing punch. And what worries me even more is in the late 90s, they started up the academy system. Now, I know the kids don't head it that much, but there will have been dedicated sessions showing kids how to head the ball.
Yeah, well, I mean, you'd be able to check that on that EPPP. They had a kind of a schedule, a performance plan that the academies had to work to. And I would imagine if you're developing an elite level footballer, you know, heading is a massive part of it.
Absolutely. It definitely is. And like I say to you, Joey, I wrote to all 92 league clubs and all the Women's Super League clubs asking if myself and Professor Willie Stewart could come and talk to the players. We got nowhere. I got a leaflet printed. I went to my local club, Doncaster Rovers, and I gave it to some of the players, and then I got thrown out. The lads told me they weren't allowed to talk to me. They just don't want this getting out.
Well, again, I've just come out with managing in League One and League Two, and obviously played. And there's meetings, you know, quarterly with gambling people who come in to tell you about the dangers of gambling in football, people who come in to tell you the dangers of using recreational drugs in football, people telling you all different things, mental health, awareness of LGBTQ issues, whatever it may be. And yet something that is clearly having a detrimental effect on players' livelihoods after football is just not being made aware to these young men who could potentially be heading to, you know, a nursing home a lot earlier than they should naturally.
Yeah.
What a grave.
Well, it's the illness, you can't get better from it. Once it starts and it progresses. And it's not a pretty... Anybody who's had dementia in the family will know it's an awful disease. But the problem we had was that when Dad was... The footballers show very similar symptoms. Chris Sutton's dad was the same. They go through this period where they're fearful. They're really frightened. They can't be left on their own. They have to be near them and all the rest of it. And we had people coming in. We took my dad to see professors. And they didn't have a clue. They actually said, we don't know why he's behaving like this. We have no idea. We've never seen it before. And it's no wonder because they don't know about the disease. GPs don't know to look for it. Coroners often don't know to look for it. It needs to be, everybody needs to know about this disease you get from having head impacts.
I'm thinking about, as I say, we'll get to the PFA because I know there's a real good talking point in around that. We've got different experience of that. And I'm looking there, and you mentioned Chris Sutton, who's got a massive profile, Chris. He's obviously doing a podcast with Ian Ladyman, you know, works for the major broadcasters, and I have seen him, you know, talk about this. The other one is obviously Gordon McQueen, who passed away not long ago, and obviously Hayley's in the media as well. And I'm like, how is this not being addressed when clearly there's, you know, yourself, you're obviously passionate about this. But we've also got some people who've got high profiles who've had family members pass away, and yet it's been brushed under the carpet.
Well, Chris has been very supportive in everything I've done. He retweets things and he's backed me up and he's done loads of articles with the Mail. I know that Hayley, she came out very publicly because their family went to the PFA for help and they got nothing. I know there was a big article in the Mail. The trouble is with this, Joey, is who's accountable? Who's accountable for this? What I've found is that, like, for example, with the PFA, they're not doing anything like enough, in my opinion, to help the former players who they should be representing and protecting. And I wrote to the TUC, basically to say this union's not doing its job. Don't want to know. So it's very difficult to actually get any traction, which is why I'm glad you've invited me on here.
Yeah, well, as I say, my experience of the PFA is slightly different. It, for me, got me into sport and chance clinic, introduced me to Peter Kay, and that fundamentally helped me, turn my life in a different direction. And as a union, I've always found them to be really good. One of the better unions. Obviously, there's a lot of money in the game now, and I think, from Gordon Taylor's time there, I think he was the highest paid union leader in the world at one point. And I look at it and I go, it's an organisation that, has supported its members, but clearly, are they capable? Do they have the finances to be able to help out and help these ex-players get care?
I think the problem you've got, Joey, is that the PFA depends. They probably couldn't pay even the chief executive's wages, Maheta Malongo's wages of $650,000 a year. The only way they can afford that is because they get £25 million a year off the Premier League.
Okay.
I believe the system's broken. I think it's compromised.
Well, if you're getting 25 million from the powers that be, you're not going to rock that boat, are you?
I would have thought not. So at
that point, they're letting the union members down then, because they're bought and paid for by the Premier League. If that's the case, I mean, and that's wrong.
That's the system. That's what's going on at the moment. And I believe the players are being let down very badly.
So what about the FA on this? Where's the FA's position?
It's very difficult for me to talk about that, Joey, because my family are part of a lawsuit against the FA and IFAB, and I think it was Welsh FA. So it's hard for me to talk about. What I will say is, basically, in my opinion, it's all been covered up. It's that obvious, this disease, and how many players have had it, that there's a problem. I know people high up in the footballing world who totally believe there's a causal link. To me, it's still being denied.
Well, this came about, as I say, when I looked at the concussion movie and the NFL players, these were people who were putting themselves in cars and killing themselves because of the damage that was done to them with these brain injuries, this CTE that was subsequently found after the autopsies in the brains of these athletes. And, for me, as I say, the difficult thing is here, if this is brushed under the carpet and ignored, there's going to be some footballers who are going to be in a hell of a tough situation in the next 10, 15, 20 years based on, forgive the pun, but having the heads in the sand about what's actually occurring on a daily basis on the training ground, and then obviously on a match day in game.
Yeah, and the point you make, you see, it seems like my dad's era is miles away. But there's two lads at Leeds I played with, and one of them, their specialist, absolutely thinks he's got CTE. Another one's had another neurodegenerative disease. I've spoke to two Premier League champions. They believe they're starting with symptoms, and they're terrified. Absolutely terrified. Well,
that's the thing, isn't it? When you meet an old boxer and you're catching up or whatever, you can see, you go, he's a little bit punch drunk. You can start to see, little bits of slurred words, little bits of delayed reaction or whatever. Is this the same? In terms of, I don't know the disease. I've got a family that's got Huntington's disease in it, and they felt, one of me, it's hereditary, and they felt my uncle had passed away with Parkinson's because, again, it was not diagnosed pre-2000. Subsequently, it's not. They all thought it was Parkinson's, and it's turned out it's Huntington's. Obviously, my uncle passed away last year with it, very young. So I was lucky in terms of it just passes on, and you either get it or you don't. I dodged a bullet on that, and again, for me, it's some people more susceptible to Parkinson's, dementia-like symptoms, or you're saying it's CTE. And is this, obviously not everybody's getting this, John. Not every ex-player's got these problems, and obviously every ex-player will have headed the ball.
Yeah, the analogy is that not everybody who smokes gets lung cancer, but there's a much higher rate, and
higher risk,
and that is exactly the same that I believe is going on in football. Not everybody will get it, thankfully, because believe me, it's horrific. So that's the way I would put it. Not everybody does. Nearly, well, a good many of my dad's team, both Man United 68 team and the 66 team did. There's a major risk there Joey, and like I say, it's just frustrating for me. I honestly believe if you went and asked Kyle Walker or Lucy Bronze, did they know about CTE? I think they'd say they didn't have a clue. That's not right.
Yeah, I mean, have you tried to get into any individual clubs and say, look, can we speak to your players and let them know what's going on here?
Like I said, I wrote to all 92 league clubs. Nobody let us in. We got a couple of responses. That was it, saying no. And like I said to you, I went to Doncaster Rovers, stood in the car park, started giving out leaflets. They threw me
to the players.
Yeah, and I tell you, Joey, it was quite emotional because I'm looking at these young lads and they're just kids, giving the leaflet, and I'm thinking he's going to go on that pitch. He's probably going to head 20 balls today. It's not the matches where the damage is done. It's the training. And I calculated that my dad would have headed the ball between 70,000 and 100,000 times. Chris Sutton reckoned he's headed the ball about 80,000 times, but he thinks that's conservative. If you've headed the ball that many times, I honestly believe there's a real big risk that you're going to get this disease.
Is there any research being done by anybody? Is anybody collating all this data?
Well, Willie Stewart's the foremost man in the world. He's done the 2 studies. And what they've been hiding behind, because you can only detect it at autopsy, they've been saying, we want more research. Willie Stewart's studies, especially the second one, for me is conclusive. It's just blatant. It's just staring at you. But maybe because it's so obvious, or maybe ex-players, footballers are seen as, if you like, spoilt and privileged. Nobody's listening.
So you're going into these... You went to Doncaster Rovers, you said there, and you've got leaflets that you're giving to the players to give them some awareness of what's going on. Did you say they threw you out the training ground?
Well, they came out and said, initially they were all right, and then a couple of the lads went in with the leaflets, and then they came out and said, oh, you've not made an appointment, COVID rules and all that. So I went outside to where they were coming in the cars. So the first couple of lads, I said, can I just give you this, introduce myself? The last car, the lad said to me who was driving, they just rung us up and said, we're not allowed to talk to you.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't surprise you sometimes. I did hear something about this not long ago where they were saying you should only head the ball 7 times, or they were going to limit people's weekly allowance or daily allowance to 7 headers a day. Is that right?
No, what the FA said was you can only do 10 high-impact headers a week. Now, they worked that logic out based on that's about the amount of times that you would head the ball in a match. That was the scientific research to get the 10 headers. But it's not policed. It's not policed. And like you've made the point earlier, if the coach says to you, look, go and head to 30 balls and you play on Saturday, what they're going to do? They're going to head 30 balls. Like I said, they'd head a brick wall if it meant they could get in the team. So Nuno Santos, when he was at Wolves, he blatantly said, I'm not doing that. They'll be heading the ball.
Nuno, Forest manager now, Nuno Espirito Santos.
Yeah.
What he said, he's not listening to the 10 headers a week.
Yeah, and there was no punishment, no penalty. It would be very difficult to enforce. My suggestion was that the players had an app where if they'd been made to head the ball more times than they should have been, that they could do it, so they wouldn't get into trouble with the club.
Well, that's the thing. It's going to be so hard to police because it varies from player to player, obviously from club to club, in terms of the way the session's designed or whatever. You know, some managers, I would imagine. I'm just thinking back to Newcastle days and one of Sam Allardyce's sessions where he literally had the keeper kicking it as high as he could in the air and the centre half's heading it to start the practice. If you get CTE from those headers, then the 4 centre halves that were training that day for us have certainly got it off that session. Okay, so what's a win for you then, John? So if we say, you're saying the FA, who I believe are the custodians of the game, brushing it under the carpet, PFA don't want any part of it. If Richard Masters in the Premier League tried to help out because...
Well, they created a fund last September. I was at a big meeting at Wembley in 2022 and everything came... Anyway, the upshot of the meeting was that a fund would be set up. I quite clearly said I don't think the PFA should be administered. They shouldn't have anything to do with it, given the way what they've done or not done so far. And everything was agreed. Yeah. Well,
a fund set up for people with
with footballers with dementia.
Okay.
So it was supposed said that would be done in a year, and in the meantime there'd be an interim fund. So that would be done straight away. The interim fund got set up last year, took 16 months, and the interim fund is £1 million, Joey. £1 million won't even cover the long-term healthcare costs for a family, 12 families for a year. It's a sham. And the Premier League put 750,000 into it. I've written to Mr. Masters and I've written to Maheta Malongo, basically expressing my disgust. To me, it's an insult to all those players who got no help. There's no sign of the proper fund, if you like. So, give you an example. At the weekend, Chris Nicholl passed away, unfortunately, very sadly. A wonderful man. The family asked for help from the PFA for years, and they never got a penny. Not a penny. And that's just...
So how long's he been?
He's been poorly for 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
And it's the care costs. So the wins for me, as you asked me, Joy, a proper fund of maybe 20 million a year. And if the players, there aren't that many players who get ill, but I think there will be, then they won't spend the money. But it should be made available. So a large fund, not £1 million. A family called the McNamee family. John McNamee played for Newcastle, and the PFA told them that they wouldn't have to sell their house because the fund was coming. Anyway, fund was well overdue. They had to sell the house. When they saw the size of the £1 million fund, the family, this is the sort of people they are, they looked at it and they'd sold their dad's house, so they had some money to pay for care. They said if it had been 10 million, they might have applied for help. But because it was only £1 million, they didn't want to take it off any other family who would really need it, who wouldn't have a house to sell. And this is what's going on. So it's just, I have to stop myself from my blood boiling, Joey. So the wins are a proper fund, advice given to players. So when you've got a kid and they go into the academies, the parents have to sign a waiver or whatever to say, we've been educated about CTE and the brain damage that can be caused by football, and we're allowing our child to play. That should be from the time they join a club. When they get to 18, the player can then sign a waiver saying, I've been advised about CTE. I don't want to stop heading in football. Heading in football is one of the most exciting things. The ball gets knocked out, the winger just beats somebody, crosses it in, big header, great goal, it's magic. It's magic to watch. But they should know. And then they can make their own informed decision.
Yeah, I would imagine if you're competing in martial arts or boxing or whatever at a young age, there's waivers that you'd have to sign to say, look, if you get punched in the head, it's going to be at your own detriment. You can't come back for that. So, and I think lots of people, even armed with the research of what could happen to you, would still play football. Obviously, you would taper the way you headed the ball and approach your training compared to, not knowing anything and just heading it as many times as you possibly can, thinking there's going to be no ramification for that. And then also, when I look at it, is there any way, we can get not just the families and of the players supported, but also some research done to say, look, this is what's happening. This is the damage that's being done by heading the ball 150 times a week compared to just on a Saturday during a game or just 20 headers. Is there a figure?
Well, there's no figure at which you can say the damage starts. One thing's for certain is the amount of times that my dad headed the ball was too many because he got the disease. So you can't really say. Research absolutely should continue. It should continue. No, fortune should be thrown into it. But it shouldn't be at the expense of people having to wait to get help and cautionary advice being given out to the players now that there is a good chance that there is this risk. Research should carry on. But at the moment, players need protecting and ex-players need help.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it going, obviously FA, PFA, Premier League, and then on the backside of that, you've got the EFL. The games never had as much money in it, and that is a product of standing on the shoulders of all the giants that have gone before and built the game, put the bodies on the lines in more ways than one, it seems. And for them, their family to be left picking up the pieces of that and the financial pieces of that in order to taking care of them, I think is wrong. Can the PFA? Surely the PFA should be driving this as the union.
Of course they should be, but they're not.
So the guy in charge now's just stonewalling you?
Well, Maheta Malango, he came in 2022. In my opinion, nothing's been done. What's frustrating for me, Joey, is naively I thought when Dad died, I thought I'll come out, and my dad was well known.
Yeah, World Cup winner.
World Cup winner, and I'm very, very proud of him for that. But I actually thought because of his name and all the rest of it, it got on national news and everything. I thought, well, maybe something will happen. Maybe somebody will do something. Virtually nothing. Virtually nothing. It's not gone anywhere in terms of advice to players and something being set up to take care of the ex-players who are suffering. And in my opinion, they're not doing enough. Last year, he managed to get a raise of £150,000 a year on his £500,000 salary. And I think I'm right in saying I don't think you get sued for putting this on. I think they said it was for the cost of living crisis.
Well, I think was Gordon Taylor not paid over £1 million when he was in that hot seat for years?
Well, in his last year, I think Gordon Taylor was paid over £3 million.
Wow,
that's a union leader
who clearly has a lot of capital at that union. If you're getting £25 million a year off the Premier League or whatever, there must be and I've heard they've got LS Lowrys and stuff in kind of assets, and yet you've got players here who are having to sell homes, having to sell medals, having to beg, steal and borrow to get residential care treatment for the family member, and yet the union has a surplus and is not helping out. I think that's wrong.
Well, the other thing, Joey, is so you had the PFA, and then you created the PFA charity. There's an investigation now going on by the Charity Commission into the PFA charity, and the PFA union is now saying that the PFA charity is separate completely from the union. Well, in the PFA charity, which is now called the Players Foundation, there's £55 million.
Sitting in the bank?
In assets.
Well, yeah, assets.
Yeah. £55 million. And the families are not getting help, like the McNamees and the Chris Nichols families. To me, you can't rate it.
I mean, what is a union set up for if not to take care of its players and former players?
That's exactly it.
That's what a union is. It takes care of its members. That's why you join a union. That's why you pay into a union. And yet, if you don't support your members and ex-members in times of need, then you defeat the objective of your purpose to begin with.
Well, you're all getting paid, though.
Well, I know. As again, if you're saying, charity investigation in terms of, and I know I've heard the noise about the PFA for a long period of time. There's been lots of people in the media and stuff throwing bombs at it. And as I say, I'm a little bit biased in terms of they've always been great when I've dealt with them, John. But again, clearly in this scenario, there's a lot left to be desired.
Well, I think you'll find, Joey, that high-profile players in the past have been helped.
Yeah.
Perhaps if you played for Donny or Mansfield, could be the case that you wouldn't get necessarily a load of help.
Yeah, I know it's slightly different, but again, I'll have to push back on you a bit. I do know people from all levels of the game. I get naturally you would be there for your higher profiles because obviously it's all over the media and they've got to be seen as doing the right thing by the members. But I know they do also support all levels of the game. Maybe not, well, clearly not based on what you're telling me at every single aspect. So again, we have to look at what can we get out of this, John. What in terms of we're moving forward. We say okay, the Players Fund. Noah, can you just get me the CTE in America and now the NFL? Because surely our route map. My first awareness of CTE is the concussion movie in the NFL. What are the NFL, what are American sports doing to kind of say to our union, look, this is what the NFL are doing to support ex-players. why aren't you doing the same? You know, the Premier League and the NFL are the same size. Football's as big as, if not bigger than, well bigger than American football.
Well, I know that what they've done in America, the NFL have put a massive fund together. I think it was about £1 billion to take care of players who are struggling.
And ours has had $1 million. Fucking hell. Honestly, ours has had $1 million and they've put $1 billion in.
That's what I believe. You can
We're
check
trying
that
to
one
find
out.
it here, yeah. Yeah, I've seen it, like, the rugby are changing it, aren't they? When you see rugby union now, I was seeing a game at the weekend and a guy got taken off because they were now wearing smart gum shields. Right. And because the collision he'd had, it says potential head injury, he has to come to the side, and he was kind of like, I'm okay. But the gum shield had picked it up. So,
that's interesting. So,
and the fact that they've, I mean, have they actually acknowledged that it could be CTE? Yeah, well, at least the NFL, you can see off the NFL are saying that, look, it's something because they.
Well, I think they've set up the fund without taking liability, Joey.
So they're saying it's dementia, though?
Well, all the brains. I know that there's a guy over in America doing a brilliant job called Chris Nowinski, and I think it's the Concussion Legacy Foundation in Boston, and I think something like they examined 110 brains of NFL players because it's had more. We're about 15 years behind in terms of publicity.
Yeah, these are saying here, look, in the NFL, they're reporting 1,241 former players who filed dementia claims based on diagnoses from the doctors, but only 15% were approved. I mean, even 15%'s a large number.
Support once they actually develop signs of dementia.
Okay. And you're saying that comes on later in life, obviously, but the CTE you can't diagnose until the autopsy.
Exactly. Like I say, the footballers, they start getting symptoms later on. Would say it's late 50s, early 60s. The NFL players is much earlier. But what I was saying about that, the brains, so out of 110 brains, it was something like 109 of them had CTE in the American football.
Okay. And where's the footballers? Have we got a similar kind of...
Well, we haven't because nobody's been donating brains. Hardly anybody. We donated my dad's brain. I think I know 4 or 5 other families who've donated their husbands, wives, husbands, daughters, whatever. They've donated their relative's brain. Every one of them, as far as I'm aware, has come back with CTE.
John, look, is there anything else you want to talk about? I think that's covered off most of the stuff we spoke about. Again, you know, for me, the wins, you're saying, set up a fund without $1 million in that properly takes care of the families.
Absolutely.
Based on, you know, the NFL. I wish we could pull up the numbers for that, because if that's at $1 billion and ours is at $1 million, then, you know, that seriously needs looking at. And again, all players being aware, as you rightly point out, you're a man like me who's played the game. You'd have certainly wanted to know that at a young age if you were going to develop, you know, long-term problems through heading the ball. I would have, you know, not just for me, but, you know, it might change the way you train.
Exactly.
It might change the way, you know, I remember one game I got knocked out twice in the same game against Middlesbrough. Went up for a clash of heads with Deriva, knocked him out. Knocked down, I was probably out. He got stretchered off, I played on. Went up 15 minutes later, which I can't remember, with George Boateng, knocked him out. And I knocked myself out again. I played to half-time, played 10 minutes of the second half, and I don't remember anything after the first head collision. Well, so I've definitely got, you know, problems.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Joey, because you know the big thing about the concussion substitutes, you know, where they come on temporarily, they can make a proper thing. The reason why that is so important is because of what's happened to you there. There's a thing called second impact syndrome. Now, if you get concussed, you're at risk. If you get concussed again, it can prove fatal. This second impact syndrome is very, very important that this gets sorted out. And it just shows the attitude of the authorities that they're not taking it on board, like the rugby have done.
Yeah, but this is a long time before all the protocols start coming. I don't think it happened now with the doctors. They've been taken off at the first one. But as I say, Deriva was stretchered off. I've met George since. George's head was like a coconut. Solid guy, George Boateng. He was bingoed. And I've gone out playing, honest, this is the best thing about it. So everyone's asking me, they said at half time, like, are you okay? And they said, yeah. I'm like, I can't even remember speaking to you. And they're like, so I go out second half, and the only reason they take me off is after 10 minutes, I just keep just turning and passing the ball to absolutely nobody. And at that point, the manager's realised he's not with the programme here, and they've taken me off. So anyway, a couple of days later, I'm laughing, going, I haven't remembered after the first egg collision, which was at 20 minutes. You take me off 60 minutes. I can't remember a big period there. How did you just not know? You know, I said, that was, you know, you've taken me off and I've turned around and given the ball away. They said, you've fucking done that all the time anyway. We just thought that was just you being normal. But again, as you know, as I say, John, I could without knowing an awful lot about the individuals involved in it, you know, all of us are sitting here, I'm thinking straight away, could be me. You know, I've headed a lot of balls out of the near post and loved heading the ball as a kid and loved heading the ball as a professional. But also there's positions that lads I've played with who pretty much all they could do is head the ball. You know, we were talking on the phone last time about obviously Bobby Charlton and Jack Charlton. And obviously you've got some connection with the Charlton family. And
yes, yeah.
Like Jack, obviously centre half, I would imagine has headed the ball a lot.
Yeah. And
you think he was somebody who had CTE?
I don't know what the family did afterwards, but I'd be convinced. See, Ray Wilson, Jack Charlton, my dad, Martin Peters. I know there was another player who got diagnosed, but it's never...
Bobby Charlton's in that team.
Bobby Charlton's in the team. So, yeah, so to have that many in one team...
Alan Ball
died long before this. He had a heart attack. But so if you take my dad's Manchester United team, just for example, Joey, you got 5 of the European Cup winning team got dementia. Now, to get that many in one team is ridiculous. But that's one club. There's another 91 clubs. Do we honestly think that their brains are going to be different? The Man United lads are going to be different to the others? Mm-hmm. That's how big it is. And at every club they've got squads of 28, and then you've got the youngsters. And the other thing that's concerning, Joey, is we're only talking about the professional game. I was talking to Josh the other day. I said, he played at a slightly lower level. Yeah, how many times did you hit the ball? Thousands. This could be a major factor.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it is. Clearly it is. If heading and CTE are kind of going hand in hand, then think of how many thousands of times you have a head contact with the ball as an aspiring young football person, male or female. It's a massive part of the game. And what can we do? I don't think we can stop heading the ball.
No.
I just don't think it'd be the same game if you couldn't head in the game. But then if you limit people's heading during the week, would it make them worse players on a Saturday?
That's the dilemma. So say, and like you say, the lower you go down, probably the more direct the game will be. You're not passing out from the back as much and all the rest of it. And that's the dilemma. And people's livelihoods depend on it, particularly the more you go down the leagues. There's not as many millionaires. So, we should be doing whatever we can. But if everybody knows, mate, it's up to you then. It's a free country.
Nobody's saying... This is it, yeah. We've got to find the research and again, let people know what they're getting into. Like anything, you get food now and it says, if you eat this, it could have this side effects. You go to certain places that they won't let sell nuts in the establishment just on the off chance that 1 in 1,000 has got a nut allergy.
Yeah.
So if we're aware that, look, even if this is 50% of your dad's Man United team or the England team, and we're saying there's 91 other clubs and thousands of other football teams across the globe, from amateur to professional, male and female, this is something we really need to be aware of because we could be doing irreconcilable damage to future generations by burying our heads in the sand on this.
Well, for me, it's a stone cold certainty, the more I've looked at it. But the players now, who in the last 20 years, they could have been advised, or at least since CTE was discovered, basically, all those players who played in the last 20 years, it's too late for them now. But the ones now, we've got half a chance of doing, but there's still going to be, for a long time to come, I believe there's going to be so many players with CTE, who were going to get CTE. And we have to act. It's urgent. But with regards to research, you're right, Joey. Research should go on. But we need to be doing something about it now. There's more than enough evidence out there. Professor Stewart's studies. Everybody says, oh, everybody gets... Well, a lot of people say everybody gets dementia. Alzheimer's being the most
people
common.
get old.
Yeah.
We're all going to die. We're all aware of that.
But the national rate is around about between 8 and 10%.
Is that just for the normal person?
That's the normal. That's the rate. If Willie Stewart's studies are right, and with the 3 to 5 times more likely footballers to get dementia, there's 55,000 ex-footballers. So in other words, 30 to 50% of those will get dementia. That's how scary it is.
Yeah, that is scary. And as I say, when you sent me the information over and I looked through it, the early signs, I'm like, my God, I've got a bit of that. I've got a bit of that. You know, and again, I signed up for it. You know, I know I didn't know this was here, but I'm like, broken bones and, you know, the broken noses and everything that kind of came with being a competitive sportsman. I'm like, look, whatever it takes, I just want to be there. Same way if I was, as I say, a boxer, rugby player, I'd want to, you know, push my body as far as I can. But I do also think if this information is out there and people are aware of it, it will make them alter the way they do things. You know, and that is what you say in a free country. You know, you should be aware of this to have that freedom of choice, knowing what you're going to get into. John, is there anything you want to get, anything further you want to add? I mean, I think we've covered everything off there. I've really enjoyed it, mate.
Yeah, I just really appreciate you know, letting me put this out there. I can't stop anyway, Joey, because I know it killed my dad. And I believe it's, like I say, killing so many others. I just want everybody to know and get help for the suffering players. And thanks for, you know, raising the profile by letting me come on here.
Oh, it's the least I can do. As I say, we were talking before, there's a famous quote, it's better to be a lion for a day than a rat for a lifetime. And, you know, I know your dad's gone early and you feel this is a massive part of the acceleration of that. But, you know, we all got to remember, I don't think they would have swapped the situation winning a World Cup, doing what they're doing. I certainly would have for, you know, the fact that I was going to go in an early grave. As I say, some people go in there because, you know, they get leukemia at 2, you know, which is not, the world isn't fair. And I totally agree with you. I think people need to be aware of this. I think family members, you know, I want to be aware of this because I need to get my life in order. You know, I'm thinking I'm going to live forever here, and obviously, you know, I think about how many times I've edited it, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to live forever, definitely.
I think what you said is exactly right. You just said you didn't know. You probably would have done it anyway, but you didn't know. If you know, then that's what, you know, that's fine. If everybody knows. If everybody in the next 6 months gets to know about CTE, then they can all make their own minds up, as I say.
And this professor, the guy that you're talking about, where can we find him?
Willie Stewart. If you Google
what university
Willie Stewart, University of Glasgow, he's the leader in the field. He's done they call it the field study. So if you get onto that and have a look at the Anne McKee video, what is CTE, you'll...
Just pull that up, that Anne McKee video, Noah. That'll be, I think it's a short video, 3.5 minutes long. It'll be good for people to go on and have a look at that if you want to get more information. Yeah. What is CTE? Dr. Anne McKee. No, you're fine. You want to, as long as they know where to get it.
I'll put a picture up on the screen.
No, we'll put a link on there so you can go on there. Any other good literature for the guys to plug into?
Well,
that'll send them down the rabbit hole there if they get on.
Yeah, well, if you put it in about CTE, you know, and there's a few different professors who've been on, and if they just Google it, what is CTE, I'm sure there'll be a number of different videos. I find that one the most clear and briefest, so that's why I put people towards that.
And if there's any relatives of people out there who want to get in touch with John, is there a Twitter handle, Facebook? I don't know.
I'm on
contact you.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook and I'm on Twitter. John Stiles 64, and I'll be more than happy for anybody they can ask me whatever questions they want. I've researched it thoroughly, been through the science. So yeah, I'd like to hear from anybody.
Ex-players as well?
I'd particularly like to hear from ex-players, because one of the biggest sins that hasn't happened is the PFA even now don't know how many players have got dementia. They never appointed an actuarial firm to go out and seek out the players ever. It's never happened. That's what should happen. So any ex-players or any wives who are worried about the husbands who played football and they're worried that they might be, starting with symptoms, please get in touch.
I'm just thinking there, the NFL's only 20 teams and there's 1,200 players there. There's 92 clubs in the professional division. That's not conference and below, as you said. We've got an enormous amount of young people, male and female, playing football. And, if the NFL are aware of this and as I say, 1,200 cases of that, then, for us, we've got to get people in contact with each other in order to help each other out. So, John, thanks so much for coming in. I really enjoyed that, mate. And as I say, anything I can ever do to shine a light on it, as an ex-player, it's the least I can do. Use my profile to raise awareness for great causes. So, best of luck going forward, mate. And as I say, thanks so much for coming on.
Pleasure. Thanks, Joey.